Game's in the Admiral refrigerator. The door is closed, the lights out. Butter's getting hard, the eggs are cooling, and the jello is jiggling.
Welcome to Select Star Fantasy Basketball. I am Jay McShay. Thank you for making me a small part of your day. And everyone, I'd like to welcome a guest to the Fantasy Basketball. Nye from Manager One. Nye, let him know what's up.
What up, what up, what up? Coming over here and gonna get it in with some fantasy basketball, you know. Should be a good time.
For real. For real. Now, we do participate in a league, and we are number 1 and number 2 in our league, and it is competitive.
Yeah,
and
we're duking it out this week, right?
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. We are duking it out this week, and you are starting your week off very strongly, I might add. All right. Now, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, man?
Well, you would probably recognize me from Select Start Fantasy Football. I was on there all year this year. I primarily play fantasy football, but we dabbled in with the sleeper fantasy basketball this year, which has been phenomenal. Might I add, probably the best fantasy basketball format that I've played. I played a few fantasy basketball formats, and by far, I think I like this sleeper format the best. Just really trying to take the football off season and kind of just relax. Fantasy basketball is sleeper fantasy basketball has allowed me to do that. It's a very good format. I suggest and recommend it to all of you listening out there. Give it a try next year if you have not already. It's game pick oriented. Really don't have to worry about the day-to-day, the night-to-night kind of thing. You kind of just grab a guy and play him once throughout the week, and everything kind of is very, very even keel. And there's a lot of strategy that falls into it, which I like a lot. So it's been very, very good for us, for the league.
I feel the same way. I'm having a great time this year. The Sleeper Fantasy Basketball app is probably the best app for fantasy basketball on the market. And like you said, I highly suggest all of our listeners to go out there and don't mess with Sleeper, man. They're doing it right. So, look, as we said, we're gearing up for the playoffs. We're 1, we're 2. We want to make sure that we're ready for the playoffs. Let's identify a few players that can help us get ready for this fantasy basketball playoffs. And one that just jumps off the waiver wire list is Miles Bridges. What do you say, Nye?
I'm right there with you. I've been slow playing Miles Bridges for the last few weeks. And because I play more than one fantasy basketball league. So I've been slow playing him in a few leagues. And with the injuries to Gordon Hayward, LaMelo Ball's out, and they're down Malik Monk right now. Miles Bridges is almost a guy who's going to get a lot of he's going to get a lot of value. As long as Gordon Hayward is out, he's going to see his production increase and be steady, especially down the stretch heading into the fantasy playoffs. Miles Bridges is one of those guys who can get you, who could be a nice rotational piece in those first 2 rounds of the playoffs. If you've already secured your spot in the playoffs, or if you're fighting for a spot right now, Miles Bridges is probably a guy you want to add onto your team because he's going to have the opportunity. They're very, very, very thin when it comes to playmakers. He's a high flyer. And he's going to get you a lot of rebounds. He's going to get you a few points, but he's going to survive on rebounds and steals and blocks and be able to give you a well-rounded stat line Whether you play in a sleeper league where you do game pick, he's very, very at this point in the season, he's a guy you can kind of predict from night to night. He's gonna give you.
Right. So look, Miles Bridges, in my opinion, is one of those players that you should roster based on Hayward. If Hayward is not there, Miles Bridges is going to get the burn and he's going to do pretty well. I mean, he hasn't really been like lighting up the stat sheet, but he's been a serviceable player for you if you can find him, if you can find that good night. Another player that I was thinking about was RJ Hampton. RJ Hampton, young man, shooting guard. I mean, looking good on Sunday, with 16 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 3-pointers, and 2 steals, and 1 turnover in 33 minutes. I mean, he was just out there just having a great time. And, you know, this is his opportunity. This is his opportunity right now. And we can all benefit from his opportunity by just making sure that, especially with game pick, that you find the right game for Hampton. Now, what do you say?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, he's one of those beneficiaries with the big Denver, Aaron Gordon going over to Denver, RJ Hampton comes over to Orlando, and Orlando's pretty much gutted now. So what you kind of saw throughout that first week with Orlando and RJ Hampton was you really weren't too happy about the minutes, but you figured the minutes were going to ramp up at some point in time. He was kind of floating in between that 15 to 17 minute range for the first 4 games. And then over the weekend or the last 2 games, he's been plus 30 in minutes played. And we've seen that result in production, especially within a game pick scenario when, you know, it's looking like when this guy plays 30 minutes, he's going to give you a pretty solid night, which will ease your mind when it comes to rostering RJ Hampton. I think he's a guy who you should go out now and try to pick up. Not necessarily because he's going to blow up, because I feel like Chuma Okeke and Wendell Carter are going to carry the bulk of the fantasy points in that lineup. But I think RJ Hampton is a nice guy who can kind of get you a good night if you just need something solid. He could be your man. His minutes are going up. Now we'll see if that sustains. You know, he had that big revenge game against Denver the other day. So it might have been one of those situations where, hey, you know what, let him go show out against his former team. Orlando really is playing for nothing. They're in developmental mode. And, you know, he did well with the minutes, you know, game pick. I think he had 18 points. You know, so that's a solid, you know, stat line for somebody just kind of getting his feet wet, you know, towards the end of this season.
I mean, with starting, being able to start gives him an opportunity. And I absolutely hope that RJ Hampton makes the best of his opportunities in Orlando. Now, Detroit, they got a guy, Killian Hayes. He's my guy. He's submitted perhaps the best outing of his young career in a Monday win over the Thunder, when he scored 9 points on 4 of 9 shooting from the field. He also added 7 assists, 4 steals, 3 rebounds, and 2 blocks. I mean, if you had started Killian Hayes by some stroke of genius, you know, he would have got you in the mid-20s. What do you think about Killian Hayes?
I think Killian Hayes is still a question mark. You know, he missed a big chunk of this season. A highly touted first-round pick by the Detroit Pistons. They're kind of in that mode where they're trying to develop guys, and especially this guy, because this is a guy with a lot of physical tools. He's 6'5", He's a point guard, can handle the ball, he can distribute the ball. I think the biggest point with Killian Hayes is, can he score the ball and be a playmaker with the basketball in his hands? I think he'll do fine to run the offense. This stat line is kind of, I don't want to say misleading, but it's one of those stat lines that I wouldn't hang my hat on. The 7 assists is, I think, that's something I think that can be replicated. When we're talking about the blocks and the steals, he kind of survived the night on those kind of stats. You kind of want to see him put a little more, production from, on the board when it comes to scoring the basketball, which will kind of give him a nice floor. But as of right now, I think it's a good sign with Killian Hayes. And I think if you're in a position where you have a roster spot to burn, or you're kind of like just waiting for the playoffs, you're kind of planning your path forward, I think Killian Hayes could be a guy who could maybe turn into somebody, worthwhile come later on in the playoffs or in later rounds of the playoffs or possibly a championship. Killian Hayes could be a guy who's seeing 30 minutes a night and just by default is going to pretty much give you a good night, kind of like Jakob Poeltl, we talk about it.
Don't bring up my boy Jakob Poeltl. You ain't allowed to bring up Jakob Poeltl. Look, check it out. You said the magic words, playoffs. And the guy that I'm looking for right now to add to my lineup is Kelly Olynyk. Look, Kelly Olynyk they're going to see what they have in Kelly Olynyk in Houston. I mean, he has been fantastic regardless of his role, especially in the last 6 games, moving in and out of the starting lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, over that stretch, Olynyk is averaging, all right, check this out, a team high on a Houston Rockets team that's basically just trying to figure out their way. He's averaging a team high at almost 19 points per game. He's shooting almost 62% from the field and 44% from 3. Look, he's the number 1 over there in Houston. I mean, you're looking, where would you be able to find a number 1 guy this late in the season that you can add to your roster for the playoffs? Look, if you guys are listening, this is the guy. Kelly Olynyk is the guy.
Yeah, I think he is. I really think he is. He kind of had a few of those big weeks when he got over to Houston, and you kind of, brush it off because Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., you're not John Wall. You're not really thinking Kelly Olynyk is going to come over and just get that burn and be productive with all that burn. But to Houston's credit, they're playing a lot of young guys. They're playing the guys. The thing is, they're playing the guys. They have Kelly Olynyk is he's a player who can stretch it out to the 3. He can score underneath the basket. He has the talent to be a good fantasy basketball player. And he's showing it, the other night against Phoenix. He hit a couple big 3s down the stretch. I'm regretting not scooping him up because he's going to, even with a bench role, it's looking like he's going to be able to give you, 15 points, on a floor basis. And then his ceiling could get up into that mid-20s and possibly hitting the 30s, depending on whether or not Christian Wood plays or not. Kelly Olynyk could be a big boom guy down the stretch.
Yeah, definitely. Now, look, I know, Boogie has his issues, but we got to talk about Boogie. I mean, he just had a big blow-up game. He played 36 minutes, right? And 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. That's nothing to, and 2 blocks. That's nothing to shake a stick at, If you started DeMarcus Cousins, you got 30 points in our league. What do you, I mean, I'm not picking him up.
Well,
what do you?
Well, it's a little misleading. That stat line is from February, but I see where you're going. One of his most recent, performances has been a 30 spot. I would, in any format, whether it's game pick or you're playing roto or whatever, I think DeMarcus Cousins is worth a pickup. especially because he's a big guy. And in fantasy basketball, you know, big guys who grab rebounds, and he's a guy who can score, and he stretches it out to the 3-point line, and he's a guy who can assist the basketball. He's kind of like, he's a very talented player sitting out there on the waiver wire in a place where he's probably going to get opportunity to play as soon as he kind of gets up to speed. He's one of those guys in a week or two, I think a lot of people are going to be rushing out to go get, because DeMarcus Cousins is still talented. I don't care what you think about what happened with Houston or not. DeMarcus Cousins is a talented basketball player.
Well,
he's going to produce. He could produce. He's going to produce. I've picked him up in a couple of leagues because, you know, big guys. I mean, we just talked about Kelly Olynyk. Big guys who are talented this late in the season are worth a shot, because they're going to, like, at the basic level, they're going to give you a pretty nice floor. You know, when you're dealing with guards, you're just hoping they score or they assist the basketball. Here with these big guys, you know, grabbing rebounds, you got a guy who can score, who can stretch it out, and the opportunity is there. Like, Ivica Zubac, I don't think is a big deterrent to Cousins getting on the floor.
I want to thank the Clippers organization for sucking so bad, and I want to applaud them, though, for picking up DeMarcus Cousins and doing the right thing, being classy. I mean, that's a Laker move, and I'm sure the Lakers explored it. As you know, we've heard rumblings that they were exploring it. I'm glad that the Clippers picked him up, brought him back to SoCal, and I hope they're successful. I mean, just not as successful as the Lakers, but I hope they are. Look, man, thank you. This is cool. I mean, this is how we need to do this from now on. What do you say?
No, it was fun. You know, it's nice to get on with Jay McShay and talk, waivers. We talk basketball all the time. So it was only right that, we hop on here and give the people, some guys to target this week. And we know it's kind of midweek here, but, these are still guys who are going to be sitting out there, and Jay McShay is going to have you, up to date on anybody who needs to be scooped up on the weekly basis. But as of right now, it's midweek. A lot of these guys are still out there. Go pick them up. Go pick them up. And we should almost do like a drop segment. Like, some guys just need to be dropped. He's telling guys as well. But
he's telling y'all, go pick these guys up. Go pick these guys up. Again, as a recap, that's Miles Bridges, R.J. Hampton, Killian Hayes, Kelly Olynyk, and DeMarcus Cousins. That's our Week 16. Look, I want to thank Nye from Manager One. As you know, this is Jay McShay. Hey, all of our Select Start Fantasy Basketball socials, you know where you can find them. They're probably attached to this video. The links for Sleeper, if you want to go mess with them, we highly encourage you to do so, especially for football. You can get at my boy Nye. You don't want to mess with him. 5-time champion. And for weekly content, just you know what to do. Just slide us that subscribe, and to be on the drop, ring the notification bell. Hey, this is Jay McShay. Nye, thank you, man.
No problem.
Hey, man, for real, for real. You guys have a good night and a good day. I'm out.
This game's in the Admiral refrigerator. The door is closed. The lights out. Butter's getting hard. The eggs are cooling, and the Jell-O is jiggling.